I always prided myself on being the responsible one in my family. The eldest, the one who tried to keep the peace, the one who always stepped up. We were a typical American family, or so I thought. 2 parents, a younger brother, and a sister. We had our quirks, our disagreements, but nothing that seemed insurmountable. Until the day my parents decided to help my brother, David. David was always the charming one, the dreamer. He had big ideas, but they rarely materialized. After college, he drifted from job to job, always struggling to make ends meet. My parents, bless their hearts, worried constantly. They'd send him money, pay his rent, cover his car payments. It was always a temporary thing, a helping hand to get him on his feet. I bit my tongue, even when it meant less for my own struggling budget, or when I saw them dip into their retirement savings for him. They were my parents. He was my brother. Family helps family, right? The real trouble started when David came to them with his big break, an investment opportunity in a supposed tech startup. He needed a significant chunk of change, more than just rent or car payments. He needed a 5-figure sum. My parents, blinded by their love and desperate for David to succeed, didn't hesitate. They took out a second mortgage on their house, their only asset, the house they'd lived in for 40 years, the house filled with all our childhood memories. I found out by accident. An overheard phone conversation, hushed voices, then tears. My mother, distraught, confessed. David had promised them a quick return, a way to pay off the mortgage and then some. He promised them financial security, and they believed him. My blood ran cold. I knew, deep down, that this was a disaster waiting to happen. I tried to talk to them, to make them see the risk. My father, usually so calm, grew defensive. "He's your brother, Sarah. You should support him." My mother just cried, saying, "He promised. He's going to make us proud." David, when I confronted him, dismissed my concerns as jealousy. He called me negative, unsupportive. And then, just as I feared, the startup crumbled, vanished. David's investors disappeared, taking my parents' money and a substantial part of their future with them. The silence after the news hit was worse than any shouting match. It was a suffocating quiet, filled with unspoken blame, resentment, and a deep, gnawing fear. My parents were devastated, their dreams shattered. David, for the first time, seemed truly lost, but also strangely absent, unable to face the music. And me? I was caught in the middle, watching my family implode, torn between wanting to help my parents and feeling an overwhelming fury at my brother. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about sacrifice, about the unspoken rules of family that had been shattered. And I knew from that moment on, our family would never be the same again. The immediate aftermath was a suffocating quiet, punctuated only by my mother's soft sobs and my father's heavy sighs. The house, once a hub of laughter and noise, felt like a mausoleum. The big break that David had promised wasn't just gone, it had ripped a gaping hole in their retirement, leaving them staring down the barrel of a second mortgage they couldn't afford on 2 fixed incomes. They tried to hide the extent of it from me at first, out of shame, I suppose, but I saw it. The lights were off more often than not, groceries were cheaper, fewer, my mom stopped talking about her garden club, my dad about his fishing trips. Every conversation was carefully steered away from money, from David. It was like an unspoken agreement to ignore the elephant, no, the Leviathan in the room. And David, he vanished, emotionally if not physically. He'd pop in, offer a flimsy apology, a vague promise to make it right, then retreat to his own world. He couldn't look me in the eye. He couldn't look them in the eye. When I tried to talk to him to understand, he'd explode. "What do you want from me, Alex? I messed up. Are you just here to rub it in? He was quick to play the victim, quicker to deflect. He even tried to blame me once, saying if I had just been more supportive of his vision, maybe it would have worked out. That stung, a sharp, bitter pain that curdled the last remnants of my patience. I felt a suffocating mix of emotions. Guilt, because maybe I should have intervened sooner, yelled louder. Anger, a white-hot fury at David for his recklessness, his selfishness, his utter disregard for our parents' well-being. And a profound disappointment in my parents, too, for their blind trust, for enabling him for so long, for not listening to my warnings. It felt like they had betrayed me by jeopardizing their future and then expecting me to pick up the pieces. My own life, already a delicate balancing act, started to buckle under the strain. I was working long hours, trying to save for my own future, and suddenly I was reviewing my parents' bills, researching loan modifications, looking into every avenue to keep them afloat. I was becoming their financial manager, their emotional support, and the de facto bad cop trying to hold David accountable. The true test came when the bank sent the first notice of foreclosure. My parents were terrified. My mom called me in tears, saying they might lose the house. That house, the one with the faint crayon marks on the kitchen wall from when David and I were toddlers, the dent in the living room floor where I dropped a bowling ball, don't ask. It was more than just the house. It was the anchor of our family history. David, true to form, was unreachable for days. When I finally cornered him, I laid it all out. Mom and Dad are losing the house, David. Your choices did this. What are you going to do? He paced, agitated. What do you want me to do, Alex? I have nothing. You think I wanted this? He ran his hands through his hair. You always think you're so smart, so responsible. Maybe you should just help them. You're doing so well, right? That was it. That was the line. The subtle shift of blame, the implied demand that I, the one who had played by the rules, should now sacrifice my future for his mistakes. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He wasn't looking for a solution. He was looking for another bailout, another enabler. I stood there, staring at my brother, the stranger who had once been my co-conspirator in childhood mischief. My parents were caught in the vice of his financial codependency, and if I didn't make a choice, I'd be pulled in too. It was clear then that I had to draw a line in the sand, not just for my parents' sake, but for my own sanity. I had to help them without allowing myself to become another enabler for David. That choice, to protect myself and help my parents navigate this mess without bailing out my brother, felt like ripping off a Band-Aid. It was painful, it was terrifying, but I knew, deep down, it was the only way any of us stood a chance of surviving this family's financial implosion. The foreclosure notice was the wake-up call, not just for my parents, but for me. It became agonizingly clear that unless I acted and acted decisively, we were all going to sink. My parents were paralyzed by fear and a lingering, desperate hope that David would magically appear with the solution. But David, he was still living in his own reality, sending texts like, checking in, everything cool with the house, as if he wasn't directly responsible for its impending loss. I knew what I had to do. I arranged a family meeting, not a casual let's chat session, but a full-blown sit-down intervention. I told Mom and Dad it was time we faced the truth, all of us. And I told David, in no uncertain terms, that he needed to be there. For once, he actually showed up. The air in the living room was thick enough to cut with a knife. My parents sat huddled together on the couch, looking small and defeated. David slouched in an armchair, scrolling on his phone, avoiding eye contact. And I stood opposite them all, clutching a stack of papers, the foreclosure notice, printouts of their dwindling savings, and records of every penny they'd ever given David. I felt a tremor in my hands, but my voice was steady. "We need to talk about the house," I began, my gaze fixed on David. "And the fact that Mom and Dad are about to lose it because of your so-called investment." David finally looked up, his face immediately defensive. "Here we go," he muttered, rolling his eyes. "Always the drama queen, Alex." "No, David, this isn't drama. This is reality. This is Mom and Dad's life savings. This is their home. And it's all on the line because you convinced them to mortgage their future on a pipe dream." My mother whimpered, and my father put a comforting arm around her. David scoffed. "I didn't force them to do anything. They chose to help me. And maybe if you had invested too, we'd all be rich right now instead of you just judging me." He actually tried to shift the blame to me, to turn it into my failure to support him. The sheer audacity of it ignited a fire in my gut. "No more, David," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "No more excuses, no more blaming everyone else. We are here because you took advantage of Mom and Dad's generosity. You broke their trust. You put their entire future at risk." I held up the foreclosure notice. "This is real. And unlike you, I'm not going to let them lose everything." I paused, letting my words sink in. My parents watched me, wide-eyed, perhaps seeing a side of me they hadn't known existed. David, however, just sneered. "So what, Alex? What's your grand plan? Are you going to pay for it all? Is that why you called this meeting? To show everyone how much better you are?" This was it, the moment of truth. I took a deep breath. "Here's my plan, David. I'm going to help Mom and Dad navigate this to protect their home. I'm going to help them figure out a repayment plan or a new living situation if it comes to that. I will help them get back on their feet financially. But here's what I'm not going to do." My eyes locked with his, unwavering. "I am not going to give you another dime. Ever. I am not going to enable you anymore. And I'm not going to stand by while you continue to drain their resources, or mine. The well is dry, David. For you, from me, from Mom and Dad, the well is permanently dry." A stunned silence fell over the room. My parents looked between us, their faces a mixture of shock and perhaps a glimmer of relief. David's jaw tightened. His charming facade finally cracked, revealing raw anger. "You can't do that," he spat, rising from his chair. "I'm your brother. Family helps family." "Family doesn't destroy family, David," I countered, my voice firm. "And family doesn't make empty promises and then disappear when things get tough. I'm helping family. I'm helping Mom and Dad. And part of that help is stopping the cycle. You're on your own now to fix your own messes. This is the line. It's permanent." He glared at me, his face contorted, in a way I'd never seen before. A mixture of rage and a profound chilling sense of entitlement. Without another word, he stormed out of the house, slamming the front door behind him. The sound echoed through the silent living room, a final, definitive punctuation mark on the end of an era. My parents looked at me, tears in their eyes, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of exhaustion, perhaps of a dawning realization, and maybe, just maybe, a tiny flicker of hope. The line was drawn, and our family, irrevocably changed, could finally begin to heal. After David slammed the door, the silence that followed wasn't just a lack of noise. It was a profound emptiness, like a vital part of our family had been ripped away. My parents, however, looked at me with a mix of exhaustion and a hesitant sense of relief. It was as if a heavy weight they hadn't realized they were carrying had finally been lifted. They were still shattered, but for the first time in a long time, they weren't alone in their fear. That night, we talked for hours. Not about David, not about blame, but about solutions. My dad, who had been so withdrawn, put out old financial statements. My mom, usually paralyzed by worry, started to talk about downsizing, about what they could do. It was slow, painful work acknowledging the brutal reality of their situation. The second mortgage was a lead weight around their necks, and their savings were critically low. There would be no comfortable retirement, no leisurely golden years they had dreamed of. That dream had been sold off along with David's supposed tech empire. The first step was negotiating with the bank. I spent weeks on the phone, navigating automated systems, explaining our situation to sympathetic but unyielding loan officers, filling out endless paperwork for loan modifications. It was a bureaucratic nightmare. Each rejection a punch to the gut, each small step forward a monumental victory. My parents, bless them, tried to help, but their energy and understanding of modern finance were limited. I became their advocate, their translator in a world of jargon and fine print. The emotional toll was immense. Every time I saw them pinch pennies, every time my mom sighed looking at an old photo album, remembering a past they couldn't afford to revisit, I felt a fresh wave of guilt and anger. Guilt that they were suffering, anger at the cause of their suffering. My own life became a blur of work, research, and endless phone calls. My social life dwindled. My writing took a back seat. I was constantly tired, perpetually stressed. There were moments I resented them too, for putting me in this position, for their blind spots that had led us here. But then I'd see the fear in their eyes, the genuine shame, and my resolve would harden. They were my parents, and they needed me. We eventually managed to secure a modified payment plan with the bank, narrowly avoiding foreclosure. It wasn't a magic fix, it just bought us time. The next hurdle was income. My dad, despite his age and a worn-out back, started looking for part-time work. My mom, who had always been a homemaker, considered taking on small sewing jobs. It broke my heart to see them, at their age, having to hustle just to keep their heads above water. I started contributing what I could, quietly slipping money into their account, telling them it was a gift or a loan I didn't need back. I knew I couldn't carry them indefinitely, but I couldn't stand by and watch them drown. The hardest part wasn't the financial crunch. It was the quiet reshaping of our family. David never came back. Not for holidays, not for birthdays, not even when my mom got sick with the nasty flu. His absence was a gaping hole, a constant, painful reminder of what had been broken. We tried to talk about him, but it was like touching a raw nerve. My parents would get a pained look and I'd feel a renewed bitterness. The family helps family mantra now felt like a cruel joke, shattered by one brother's actions and another's forced boundaries. Rebuilding wasn't just about money. It was about rebuilding trust, especially with each other. My parents slowly started to lean on me in a new way, to listen to my advice, to trust my judgment. And I, in turn, began to understand the complexities of their generation, their fears, and their unconditional, if sometimes misguided, love. The road ahead was still long, paved with sacrifices and hard lessons, but for the first time in what felt like forever, we were walking it together, united against the storm, even if one member of our crew had jumped ship. Years have passed since that day David slammed the door. The echoes of that final, furious sound eventually faded, replaced by the quiet hum of a life being rebuilt, brick by painful brick. The immediate financial crisis eased, not disappeared, but it became manageable. My parents, resilient in a way I hadn't fully appreciated, adjusted to their new reality. They learned to budget meticulously, found joy in simple pleasures, and even slowly started to enjoy their part-time work, finding purpose in contributing. The house, our childhood home, was saved. We didn't lose it to foreclosure, but we almost lost ourselves in the process. The process of helping them rebuild wasn't a sprint. It was a grueling marathon. There were still moments of frustration, moments when the resentment would flare, when I'd see a worried glance from my mom and remember the price they'd paid. But those moments grew fewer, replaced by a deeper understanding and a bond forged in shared adversity. My relationship with my parents transformed. It shed the old dynamic of them being the infallible providers and me, the dutiful child. We became a team. They started to truly listen to my advice, to trust my judgment in a way they never had before. And I, in turn, saw them not just as mom and dad, but as two individuals who had loved unwisely, made mistakes, and were now bravely facing the consequences. We learned to communicate with a new honesty, a new vulnerability that had been missing for years. The unspoken tensions that had always simmered beneath the surface were finally addressed. And David? He stayed gone. Initially, his absence was a gaping wound, a constant reminder of the betrayal. Holidays felt incomplete, family gatherings quieter. My parents, especially my mother, grieved his loss, even as they acknowledged the relief of the financial burden being lifted. But with time, that sharp pain dulled into a quiet ache. We learned to live without him. We built new traditions. Our smaller family unit became stronger, more cohesive, simply by virtue of having navigated such a profound storm together. I wouldn't say we're a happy family in the sitcom sense. There are scars, indelible marks left by the choices made and the trust broken. But we are a resilient family. We are honest. We are united in a way we never were when David's enabling cast a long shadow over us. This journey taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about boundaries, about accountability, and ultimately about a choice. The choice to protect, to heal, and to move forward, even when it means leaving a part of your past behind. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but drawing that line in the sand, painful as it was, ultimately saved us. It allowed us to truly rebuild, not just our finances, but the very foundation of what remained of our family, stronger and truer than before. And for that, I am profoundly, quietly grateful.